Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody to Eat Clean, Get Lean, week number 12. Well, congratulations everybody. We've gone through 3 months together, and we're going to kind of wrap a few things up today, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions. I have my water with me. It was a absolutely beautiful day here in Central New Jersey. I'm sure Susan has already put up a picture of Molly and I down at the beach today. We took a walk down by the beach, and it wasn't too windy, and we're watching all the people walking on the boardwalk. People are starting to come back outside again. It's starting to look like the normal Jersey Shore again, with everyone coming down the beach and walking and biking, and dogs are out being walked, and just a beautiful sunny day. So I'm going to encourage everybody with this nice weather we're going to have now that actually it's funny, I woke up this morning and went outside at 6 o'clock, and the windshield wipers were actually frozen to my windshield. So a couple of, but like I said, today was just absolutely beautiful day. So hopefully what we're going to be able to do tonight is kind of put a wrap on all of this, and answer any questions. And again, I'll be available on Facebook. And of course, everyone also has the Facebook VIP page where you can continue to ask us questions. You know, we say once a client, always a client. So I want to be there to help. Now, I posted some pictures. Actually, Susan did. She actually did a very nice graphic for me, and it was on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm sure you got an email from us. So I've made some changes over the last 12 weeks that I feel very good about. And I'll be starting another group probably sometime towards the middle of April to get the next group ready for summer. So if you're interested in doing another 12 weeks with us, just let us know. We'll work something out for you, and we'd love to have you back. And this time I'd like to see a little bit more interaction with the group. I'd like people to give me a little bit of their results, their struggles, their triumphs, and so forth. You know, it's important that you get recognition. I've been very fortunate that in other businesses that I own, we have different avenues of recognition, and it's nice to have people recognize your accomplishments. It kind of uplifts and encourages you to push on. And sometimes when you're having a tough time, knowing you're not the only one out there trying to accomplish a goal is helpful, to know that there's other people with you. So on that note, let's get into week 12, final thoughts on stubborn fat loss. So how to target stubborn fat? Well, now that you've increased your fat burning globally by taking care to control the law of compensation and multitasking, it's time to teach you some advanced tricks for dealing with stubborn fat. So we have the 3-2-1 and the 3-2-2 protocols. Obviously, you're very familiar with those by now. Have helped you break the diet cycle and take the brakes off the stubborn fat, allowing that fat to be burned at the same rate as the rest of the body, so you can reshape to the coveted hourglass or V shape. But sometimes, while fat loss from stubborn areas has sped up, it still lags behind the rest of the body. So this seminar will help you troubleshoot this issue. And there's a guy, and he's still not where he wants to be yet. So for the sake of simplicity, we're going to divide the stubborn fat into a few specific areas. We're going to talk tonight about female lower body and cellulite, which is where you typically see cellulite in women. Female belly fat. We'll also talk about its counterpart, male belly fat. Love handles, that's over the hips and the flank area of the waist. The back of the arm fat, male chest fat. And we'll also address ways to adjust to a woman's cycle to combat fat as changes are happening. So let's start with female lower body fat and cellulite. So women tend to carry increased body fat in the lower body, mainly because of the influence of estrogen, which increases the alpha adrenaline receptors density in the hips, the buttocks, and the thigh region. Okay, remember, alpha adrenaline receptors help you to store fat, where beta adrenaline receptors help you to burn fat. Remember, we talked about B being the burn. So a lot of men have more beta receptors in their lower body. Women have more alpha receptors in their lower body. So not just that, but also it has to do with the way the collagen fibers line up in the lower body. So there's a vertical position, okay? Vertical meaning top to bottom position of the female collagen fibers result in fat cell accumulation inside collagen pockets, kind of like a pillowcase. This causes the characteristic dimpling and puckering of cellulite. It is important because the vertical distribution of female collagen fibers, top to bottom collagen, is nothing more than connective tissue, is more prevalent in the female lower body, and they form sort of a pocket in which the fat cells then grow. As the fat cells grow in size, they are essentially corralled in and packed tight together by the collagen fibers. So let me see if I can give you a picture here. So I want you to imagine a Nerf football stuffed between the links in a fence. The tight packing of the fat inside the collagen pockets creates the characteristic puckering and dimpling of cellulite. So here in the picture, you see the male skin on the top, and you have the female skin on the bottom. And you see how the male skin has more of like a crisscross pattern? Okay, so that kind of holds things back in check, where the female, you see vertical fibers top to bottom. And it's in those pockets that the mature fat cells accumulate and cause that puckering effect. Here's a much better picture of it, and you could see here the vertical fibers and how they fit into like little columns or little pockets, and that's the typical dimpling that you see. So how are we going to get rid of that? Well, why do some women have cellulite and others don't? And why do some overweight women have less cellulite than skinny women? These are great questions and underscore the need to move beyond the simple fat loss models many experts cling to. So it could have a lot to do with the shape and dimension and alignment of those vertical fibers, not how much body fat you have. So cellulite is not just an issue of gaining fat or losing fat. It is an issue of doing something to address both fat loss and collagen strength and health. Okay, so let's stop right there. What part of our diet helps it increase collagen strength and health? The answer to that is protein, right? Remember, protein and collagen is a protein derivative. So if you're on a very low protein diet, you're going to have weaker collagen strength and integrity. The reason some women get cellulite and some women don't is probably mostly genetics. Again, it has to do with the collagen alignment. Some women have collagen fibers that are more like a man's, and some have extreme versions of the vertical distribution. So getting rid of cellulite is perfectly possible for some women and far more difficult for others. Okay, but it can be done. So we're going to talk a little bit about a lower body blast protocol. Focusing on diet and exercise and stress reduction is still your best approach to reshaping your lower body. And we've taught you how to do diet, how to do exercise, and how to do stress reduction. But let's do a little review anyway. So if your goal is to lose stored body fat in your lower body and try to reduce the amount of cellulite that you have, consider sticking with the eat less, exercise less approach during lower estrogen states, which is the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. And those are the 2 weeks between ovulation and menses. Make sure you do more relaxation activities during this period, and then eat more, exercise more the other 2 weeks. Okay, so there's one approach that we have found success with. Okay, with regards to exercise, do 20-minute intense rest-based intervals or the metabolic chains for 20 minutes, followed by low-intensity walking for as long as possible, 3 to 5 times a week on an empty stomach. This is what some refer to as glycogen depleting exercise. So we all know what that is. I did that today. So that was an exercise protocol that I chose to use today. I'm using a little slightly different. I'm more in an EM right now, so I lifted very heavy yesterday. But today I did, I'll tell you exactly what I did. For the first 10 minutes of my workout, I did a bench press. I stood up, I curled the weight, brought it up to my shoulders, I squatted, came out of a squat, did an overhead press. I did that for 1 minute. Then I put the weights down, walked over to the corner, and I did 1 minute of lat pull downs. I did both arms together, all the way up, all the way down, and then I did a little bit of pulses, which means I brought the weight all the way to the bottom, but only let it halfway up and pulsed up and down, and really try to get myself to get some temporary muscle failure to the point where I couldn't finish the entire minute, which was good. Again, you have to pick a weight that's going to facilitate that. You don't want to go too light and you finish the minute, you're not even tired. You need to pick a weight that you're going to hopefully not be able to get through the entire minute, or you need to rest sometime during that minute. That's why we call it rest-based training. And then after I did the lat pull downs, then I went to the middle of the room, I grabbed a heavy kettlebell and I did a minute of kettlebell swings. Then I went back to the bench, picked up my weights, put my left foot up on the bench, and did stand up onto the bench with a curl. And then after a minute, I put that down, went over to the corner and did a tricep press down. Did that for the first 10 minutes. Second 10 minutes, a little different. I did a little step up, step down, squat, squat, jump. I did a push up into like a burpee kind of push up. I did a single leg deadlift. I did crunches and I did aboriginals. And then I did a step back into a lunge with a row and a kickback. I did that for 10 minutes. And then I came home and grabbed Molly and Susan and I went for a long walk all the way down to the beach. And I did that before dinner, which means I hadn't eaten in a while, which means I was in a glycogen depleted state. So that is exactly what a lower body blast protocol is. I just explained to you what I did. And again, as I say these things, I'm saying I'm so fast. You might be like, whoa, whoa, I'm trying to write that down. Well, the truth of the matter is you're going to have this recorded and delivered into your inbox tomorrow so you can listen to me do it over and over again. And again, if you have any questions, that's what we're here for. That's what the coaching is all about. So we're using the terms low insulin state and glycogen depletion, which we know may be confusing. The best way to think about a low insulin state is as a time when you have been without food for 4 to 6 hours or have been eating only veggies and lean protein. So that would be like a big salad and some chicken breast, right? Or broccoli and some really lean beef, or like a white fish. I don't get crazy with the oily fishes like the salmon. There's really not that much fat in it that I'm really overly concerned. But there's certainly no baked potato, sweet potato, brown rice, quinoa, oatmeal, bread, pasta, cake, cookies, pies, you know, whatever. It was just vegetables and lean protein. So you're in a slightly depressed or slightly depleted sugar state or glycogen state. The lowest insulin states would be first thing in the morning, because you've been sleeping for 8 hours, hopefully, or 4 to 6 hours after eating, or at the end of the day on the 3-2-1 protocol, when you have not eaten anything but mostly protein and vegetables all day. So what happens in this situation is that your glycogen levels start to drop a little bit, and now you're going to be more in a fat-burning metabolism. So low glycogen. Glycogen is a storage form of sugar. Your body stores sugar as glycogen in your liver and your muscles. The purpose of the liver glycogen is to supply the brain and the body with an easy sugar source when you go without eating. The glycogen in the muscle can only be used by the muscle to feed itself when reserves are low, okay? So there is muscle stored. You have a little gas tank in your muscle cells. But if you're exercising aggressively, that's going to be eliminated, and then your liver is going to have to release some of its stored glycogen into the bloodstream to get to the working muscle. But always remember that 50% of circulating sugar in your blood is dedicated directly to the brain. So the brain's going to get its cut before the muscles get their cut, which is why if you feel like you can't continue to exercise, not so much temporary muscle failure, but you just like, I got no energy, I can't get going, okay, then we have to look at maybe supplementing with a pre-workout type drink. I know ID Life has an excellent one that I use, and it's made up from branched chain amino acids, which will break down before the body starts breaking down valuable body proteins to feed the brain and nervous system. So I know we're talking about staying in a low glycogen state, which is exactly what branched chain amino acids will help you to do. Branched chain amino acids are proteins. Proteins that break down to continue to feed the brain and nervous system and supply the working muscle with a little bit of sugar so you can continue to work out without eating starch. I know that sounds like a lot of double talk. If you have questions, this is where the coaching comes in. This is where we can help. The ID Life pre-workout drink that I use also has a very light caffeine style stimulant in it, so it helps to ramp up my my nervous system, and it really helps to facilitate a great workout. And I had an awesome workout today, and I was able to walk, and then I came home, and I didn't eat as soon as I got home. I waited about a half hour so that my body would continue to burn fat, and then I had a really great dinner. Susan made some really delicious pork chops and some sweet potato and some sauerkraut and green beans. That was our dinner tonight. Okay, so if your glucose stores are constantly filled up, as they would be in an eat more, exercise less situation, which we never want to go back to, the body rarely has a need to burn fat. That's why so many Americans who eat large amounts of starch and sugar constantly, even when they go for an hour exercise session, think about people who are doing gel packs and Gatorade, will never lose fat. Now, here's the thing you have to understand. So many times people come to us and they say, well, I was reading this magazine and this is what this athlete does. Or I was reading this bodybuilding magazine or the Shape magazine, and they said you should use gel packs when you go for a walk or when you go into exercise to try to get your sugar up. And I always say, well, is your goal to be this athlete or to lose stored body fat? Now, remember, we go back to metabolic multitasking. Your body doesn't like to, will not burn fat and build muscle at the same time. It wants to do one or the other. So if it's your goal to lose stored body fat, which you want to do first, right, is you need to get into lower glycogenic, situation. You have to keep your glycogen stores low so that your body will be forced to burn fat and lose stored body fat. Once you get to your goal weight, and now your goal is to build a lot of lean mass, then things start to change. Or if you're in an athletic performance activity, like you're playing beach volleyball, or you're playing soccer, or you're going to run, a half marathon, now the ability to have sugar available for performance is a whole lot different, right? Because you can't perform without the sugar in an athletic event. But most of us on the phone right now, our goal is not to go out and run a half marathon tomorrow. Our goal is to hit the gym tomorrow, to eat in a way that we're going to continue to lose stored body fat. I hope that makes sense to everyone. You can't compare someone who's trying to lose weight to someone who's an athlete who's going out to do an athletic event tomorrow. So when I was on the sideline playing rugby, I wanted to keep my blood sugar high because I had to run aggressively. I was in a competition. Versus now, I'm not competing with anything, so my goal is losing stored body fat. Now, 2 months from now, when I'm out playing golf, and I got to keep my brain and nervous system functioning optimally, I will take some type of sports performance drink. I'll use Hydrate, ID Life Hydrate, to keep my brain and nervous system functioning optimally because I want to give it vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, and a source of carbohydrates so I can continue to function. I hope that makes sense. Glycogen depletion is a state where the liver and muscle glycogen is lowered to some degree, making the body less reliant on stored sugar and more reliant on stored fat. Be careful though. Extreme glycogen depletion by randomly cutting out all carbs and exercising like a fiend can cause the body to lose muscle too and suffer metabolic compensation. And we talked about metabolic compensation. That's when your body starts to decrease your metabolism to try to match the amount of calories coming in. Okay, so this is why adequate protein intake, finding the carbohydrate tipping point, and training with weights is so critical to your fat loss efforts, all right? So remember, we start every meal with protein, fiber, and water. Those are the first three things we put into a meal, right? Those are the three most important things we start with. And then we start adding in fat, and we started adding in carbohydrate depending on which meal it is. And again, we went through this to nauseam. Okay, we know that keeping your HEC in check is paramount to losing stored body fat. If your HEC's not in check, even if you're losing body fat, it's not sustainable. Let's talk a little bit about female belly fat. Now, female belly fat is more rare compared to male body fat, and it has to do a lot with the impact of estrogen and progesterone to protect fat gain around the middle. It also has to do with alpha-androtic receptors versus beta-androtic receptors. Remember, women have more beta-androtic receptors in their abdomen, which helps them burn fat, not store fat. Men have more alpha-androtic receptors. That's why you see a guy with really thin arms, really thin legs, no buttocks, and a big belly. It's obvious that there's a hormonal shift going on there, and there's more. Remember, we talked so much about how our diet and our exercise and sleep and stress affect how many alpha-androtic receptors we have in one area versus beta. Those can be manipulated through diet, exercise, and stress management. But if you're starving yourself all day and then eating, 4,000 calories at night, and you're sitting in front of the TV and you're not sleeping, and you have a lot of stress, it's going to affect how men store body fat. We'll get into that in a little more detail. I digress here. So subcutaneous fat, that's belly fat just under the skin, and visceral body fat, deep belly fat, have slightly different properties. Let's get into that a little bit. Young women typically complain of stubborn subcutaneous belly fat, while older women complain of both visceral and subcutaneous fat. Belly fat means you're more like an apple shape, not a pear. Pears are thinner at the top, they're wider at the bottom, right? Apples are just round. The hormonal impact. Cortisol and insulin have a very strong influence on belly fat in both men and women, with cortisol having more influence there for women. Okay, and that has to do with stress. Often women with body fat, meaning increased waist to hip ratios, that means instead of there being like 8 inches to 10 inches, which is, or actually more like 7.5 to 10, right? We want that 75% ratio of 0.75, 0.77. We look for, remember when we do Dr. Jade's body fat calculator, we start looking at those numbers. With women, we're looking at 0.77 as being optimal, right? When you have increased waist to hip ratios, more stress sensitive and less stress adaptive, especially thin women with belly fat. So I have a picture here. So we have a lean woman who has more peripheral fat, and you could see in this very simple picture, the weight is more distributed across her body. She has less weight in her abdomen. She has a little more weight in her hips and her thighs. Even in this really not great picture, you can see that. Versus central fat, where you see the woman in B, even the lean woman, she has no hips, no buttocks, no fat in her legs, but all the weight is in her abdomen. Conversely, you could also be slightly overweight with peripheral fat, and here you see the woman where her fat is well distributed across her whole body, and in the central fat, you see again no buttocks, no hips, no weight in the thighs, and all the weight is in the abdomen. This drives home the point that belly fat is not a simple matter of gaining or losing fat. Calories matter, but hormones may matter more when it comes to where we store fat and how to attack stubborn areas of body fat unique to us. So, stress and fat gain. If you are a woman doing everything right and still struggling with female belly fat, and especially the thin woman suffering from belly fat, you need to understand that the primary issue for you is stress management. It's not too many calories. It's not too many carbohydrates. Excuse me. It's not because you're not doing enough exercise. It has to do with stress. All right, it's time for me to take a sip. So what exactly is stress? Stress is not just unpleasant, high pressure, at the office anxiety. It is all that, but it's also being a new mom, home with a little baby, being sleep deprived and nutritionally depleted. She's probably more stressed out than anybody out there, despite the fact she's probably thrilled and very happy. So how do we combat this stress? Well, since belly fat can be mostly attributed to stress, consider any and all rest and recovery activities that lower stress. So try to get an extra hour of sleep and making going to bed at night a priority. Go out and get a massage. Take a nice bath. You want to get in a nice Epsom salt bath. Take a nap. Have intimacy. These are all important things that will help to lower stress. Estrogen and progesterone together block the negative influence of insulin and cortisol on belly fat. They are reasons many women tend to have lower incidence of belly fat. But for those women who do have belly fat, this is normally created by hormonal situations that lower estrogen and progesterone. So the most common reasons for these hormonal changes are chronic stress, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, over-exercising. Remember we talked about going out for long jogs may be a real form of chronic stress that doesn't allow you to get the advantages that burst training does, the release of the healing compounds, or doing heavy resistive exercise. And also the hormonal changes associated with menopause. Both stress and menopause result in a hormonal impact that is lower in estrogen, higher in testosterone, and higher in cortisol and insulin. So we also have PCOS. We have people who are lean with PCOS, and we have women who are over their goal weight with PCOS. So compared to lean normal women, even lean PCOS women have significantly more storage at the belly. To combat this, we have two main goals. First is stress management. Relax the body and decrease stress hormones, especially cortisol. Okay, let me say this. There's things on the market now that talk about taking a pill to lower cortisol. Unless your doctor gives it to you, I don't recommend it. We want to manage the problem, not just cover up a symptom. Okay. So the other thing is make the body as insulin sensitive as possible by using smart nutrition and exercise. Insulin sensitivity at the muscle cells is what we're looking to increase. We don't need to increase insulin sensitivity in the fat cells. They're already very, very sensitive. Okay, we don't want to make them more sensitive. So we really want the receptors on the muscle cells to become more insulin sensitive so that those muscle cells will open up and accept the blood sugar and allow it to get to the mitochondria so it can be burned, consumed, whatever, because we know if those muscle cells become insulin resistant, it's going to drive up levels of blood sugar. And what happens to that spillover effect? The body converts excess glucose to triglyceride and stores it as fat. So you'll never, ever, ever, except in very rare cases, which I can't get into tonight because it's way beyond our scope, you're never going to have insulin resistance in the fat cells. Just that doesn't happen, except in very rare conditions. But again, that's outside of our scope of what we're talking about tonight. Belly blast protocol. Exercise, diet, and supplements combined can help target belly fat. We suggest diet and exercise. First thing is the 3-2-1 approach is best for belly fat blast. So if you're a woman dealing with belly fat, this is the protocol to follow. Remember, it's 3 meals a day, 2 shakes, or 2 shake-like meals. A shake-like meal could be chicken breast and broccoli, okay, because that's protein and fiber, a little carbohydrate, but truth of the matter is the green vegetables are very high in fiber, or a little piece of cod and a nice green salad, right? Or the protein shakes we talk about. Oh, I should mention this too if anyone's interested. I do have a supplement I use, something called Lean, and if anyone buys the protein shake from ID Life, this month you're going to get a free bottle of Lean. Just throw that out there. And what Lean does, it helps control blood sugar, increases thermogenesis, which is increasing your metabolism, and it helps to stop you from gaining stored body fat. But the 3-2-1 approach is best for belly fat blast. So this is the protocol we want you to follow. Okay, so what are some suggested supplements? Well, we want a good metabolic multivitamin that includes high doses of vitamin B and chromium. B are your energy releasing vitamins. This also helps to combat insulin resistance. Remember, we don't want the muscle cells to be insulin resistant. We want the muscle cells to be insulin sensitive and provide sources that stress depletes, like zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B6. You could also use something called green coffee extract. We suggest taking 1,000 milligrams per day, like green tea extract. This is insulin sensitizing supplement, okay, which is very good. We want those muscle cells to be insulin sensitive. There's another thing called berberine, and you can get 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams per day in individual doses. Berberine may have some action against alpha-androtic receptors and outperformed metformin for insulin issues associated with polycystic ovarian syndrome in one small randomized trial. We have seen great success with this compound clinically. Inositol is another great insulin sensitizing supplement. Okay, so if you've seen me make my shake, I do use that. I will tell you, in my formulation with ID Nutrition, berberine is one of the things that's in there. There's another thing we call curcumin, and you can take 1,000 to 4,000 milligrams of that a day. Okay, this helps the metabolic command and control center, the hypothalamus and pituitary, to better react to stress. It also blocks the two major enzymes involved in fat storage. That's fatty acid synthase and belly fat resistance. That's 11-beta. Don't worry about the, just remember curcumin helps. And again, that is, there's another supplement that curcumin's a brand name for turmeric. And again, turmeric, it also happens to be in my formulation with ID Life. So when I took my assessment, because I do have a family history of type 2 diabetes, it was thrown into my formulation. So that's a nice thing about using an assessment tool, giving the information to the assessment tool, telling it what your goals are, what your issues are, so you get a formulation. And the one thing that with the ID Life assessment is that it is very similar to what you're going to see in a situation with a pharmacist, where they're looking for drug interactions. That same, because ID Life, our chief formulator is a pharmacist, he's using that same technology. So you're going to get the benefit of that. Okay, so what's a metabolic multivitamin? This is a term we use to distinguish a higher-end multivitamin designed to help the body deal with hormonal issues than that from the standard multivitamins found in most health food stores. Okay, so a metabolic multivitamin would be something that's made specifically for you. That's why we call it ID, individual designed nutrition. A good metabolic multivitamin will contain adequate amounts of supplements shown to help insulin signaling. This will be things like alpha lipidic acid, chromium, and green tea extract, among others. These multis also contain high potency B complex, zinc, and magnesium. Okay, so with male belly fat, just as female belly fat does best with a more restorative 3-2-1 program, male belly fat responds more favorably to the 3-2-2 protocol. Okay, and that's the eat more, exercise more model. Okay, so that's kind of like what I'm doing now. Remember, yesterday I did a real heavy workout with heavy weights, and today I did more of a metabolic workout, walking. So you can see that's still primarily one of my issues. So I still continue with my 3-2-2 protocol. So do you want to know the formula for a six-pack? Here it is. Write this down. Protein plus vegetables times sleep plus intense exercise equals a six-pack. Protein and vegetables add a high-powered hunger-suppressing punch with little insulin production. This means less calories and better hormonal balance. Sleep magnifies this effect by lowering cortisol and increasing human growth hormone, HGH, a fat-burning and muscle-building hormone. throw in some intense exercise that favors heavy weight training and interval training. Again, more human growth hormone and more testosterone equals more belly fat burning. And over a long duration cardio, which, like jogging, which increases your cortisol, and you have a recipe for a male six-pack. The fix lies in replacing the sugar and starch with fiber and raising the protein while normalizing the fat. The foods with the highest ratio of fiber relative to starch are the non-starchy vegetables. That's your asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, Brussels sprouts. You will want to shoot for 9 servings per day. One of the biggest mistakes many make when looking for the tight six-pack is confusing starches like beans, corn, peas, and potatoes as vegetables. These foods are wet starches, which can certainly work in small amounts, but they need to take a back seat to the non-starchy vegetable intake. So, just follow along with me, because this is what I'm doing right here. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, do 20 minutes of metabolic chain workouts. Today's Wednesday. Oh, guess what I did today? Don't take structured rest. Instead, push until you can't and rest until you can. We're not trying to get you to quit. We're trying to force you to rest and see how many rounds you can get in 20 minutes. So today's Wednesday. That's what I did. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you do 20 minutes of rest-based training intervals. Do 20 seconds hard, then rest for 20 seconds. Okay, so that's where I lifted real heavy, and then I took a rest. Then you can do 30 seconds hard and 30 seconds rest. Then 40 seconds hard and 20 seconds rest. So you can see you're getting harder and harder and resting less and less. Then 1 minute hard and 1 minute rest. Repeat 4 times, or if you can handle it, go do some track sprints. Okay, that's some pretty intense exercise. Saturday, do some traditional cardio, a hike, a bike, or no run. Combined with the activity above will work great. Sunday, rest. Don't forget, walk daily and get more than 8 hours of sleep a day. Okay, love handles. Men, to a lesser extent women, can often find that fat stored in the lateral sides of the midsection and lower back, these are called love handles, is especially resistant to fat loss. This phenomenon may result in unique physiology of the fat stored in that area. The subcutaneous abdominal fat has special properties, including decreased adipose tissue blood circulation, increased insulin sensitivity, which means more fat storage and less release, and decreased catecholamine sensitivity, decreased fat burning. Catecholamines are your adrenal hormones, your epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline. Like with all stubborn fat areas, we remind you that insulin causes increased fat storage and decreased fat release from fat cells due to its stimulation of the major fat storing enzyme, LPL, lipoprotein lipase, sorry gang, and its inhibition of the major fat releasing enzyme, hormone sensitive lipase. We talked about that about 2 months ago, so I'm bringing it back up again. It's that subcutaneous fat that is more insulin reactive and therefore stores fat more easily. Then that fat is harder to burn off. So remember, we talked about insulin sensitivity in fat cells, how high it is. Well, it's real high here. So to combat these love handles, we have 3 goals. We want to decrease insulin. Okay, we do that by, by what? Decreasing the amount of starch we take in. Block the alpha receptors and ramp up beta reception stimulation. So with the 3-2-2 diet, we're going to go with a low starch diet of less than 125 grams per day of carbohydrates from all sources. This may confuse you a bit since we've rarely given specific amounts to shoot for in this program. Don't worry, we still want you to use structured flexibility concept. If this amount of carbs is too low, and you'll know it if your heck goes out of check, then just adjust. You could think of a cup of rice or a potato as about 30 grams of carb. So if you stick to the 3-2-2 protocol, you'll be hitting this amount almost perfectly without even trying. However, given love handles are some of the most stubborn areas of the body, you may want to eventually get very specific about carb intake and perhaps revisit the carb tipping point of adjusting the timing of carbs as well. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick before I switch the slide. What do we know about carb tipping point? We know that if your heck is in check and you're losing weight, you're probably in a good place. If your heck is in check, you're not losing weight, we know that you're probably having too much carbohydrate in your diet. If you're losing weight, but your heck is way out of check and you can't sustain it, you're not getting enough carbohydrate. Also, if you find that nothing's changing, your heck is in check, you're really not losing weight, you're lowering your carbs, still not making a difference, maybe you need to revisit about when you're eating your carbohydrate or eating your starch, okay? Remember, sleep is still very high on the priority list here. So with me, if I eat my starch in the evening, I sleep better. If I try to move my starch to early in the day and just have green vegetables and protein with dinner, I don't sleep as well. And remember, sleep trumps food. Because if your sleep is disturbed, it's going to throw your hormones way out of whack, and this whole thing's going to come down like a house of cards. So you really have to be a good food detective to determine what works for you. Now, some people will say, you know, I can eat my carbs, you know, right after that hard afternoon workout, and then I just eat green vegetables and protein at night, and I sleep fine. Okay, that has not been the case for me. Okay, next is male chest fat. These are often referred to as man boobs, and it may be the most distressing fat men deal with. The good news, it's not nearly as stubborn as the love handles, and is usually dealt very nicely simply by following the 3-2-1 or 3-2 protocols outlined. Okay, when that is not the case, you'll want to think about two hormones, testosterone and estrogen. This protocol attempts to raise the testosterone while lowering estrogen. There are several things we can tell you we have found work very, very well clinically in this area. Vitamins like zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D can definitely make a difference if a man is deficient. Okay, now remember, excuse me, you know, there's vitamin D technically is a steroid. It's not just a vitamin. Okay. And it is a precursor to testosterone. So is cholesterol. That's why we need cholesterol. We've got to need cholesterol to make vitamin D to make testosterone. Okay. We find upwards of 70% of men in our clinical practice are indeed deficient in one of these nutrients. While supplementing with these nutrients will do nothing to raise testosterone if you're not deficient in them, if you do have a deficiency, it'll likely have an impact. That is what we've seen clinically, and research also validates us on this point. So when the guys tell me, nah, you know, I don't take vitamins, you know, I'm fine. Okay, well, you know, I just told you, vitamins like zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D can make a difference if a man is deficient. Most disease, and not to use the 70% that's on the screen, but, you know, I think most doctors would agree that 70% of the clients they see have to do with dietary deficiencies. So people say, well, you know, it's a genetic thing. Well, if you're not eating well and you're not exercising and you're stressed out, that's not genetics. You know, if you smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day and God forbid you get lung cancer, you know, that's not genetics. That's the environment which you put your body in. Okay, so when you put yourself in a really lousy environment of poor food, poor nutrition, no supplementation, you know, 4 hours of sleep a night, and you're not exercising, you're putting your body in a very toxic environment. You're going to get sick. And, you know, the outer you is nothing more than an expression of what's going on in the inner you. So let's talk a little bit about aromatase inhibition. Aromatase is an enzyme in the body that converts testosterone into estrogen. Many men with lower testosterone have high levels of activity in this enzyme. There are reliable natural aromatase inhibitors we use in our clinic every day. Okay, so one of the big ones is saw palmetto, which is in a lot of the different formulations for people who you know, have prostate issues. Many of these same compounds block another testosterone impacting enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. So Let me see what my next slide is. Okay, before I get into this next slide, let me say this. We have talked about in the past guys that are supplementing with testosterone patches or creams or roll-ons and all that kind of stuff. Okay. The truth of the matter is this: you can use these supplements or these roll-ons, these patches, these creams, whatever, but if you're not eating well and you're not exercising, all this extra testosterone you're throwing into your body is not going to be utilized properly. As a matter of fact, your body likes to stay in balance. So if you got all this testosterone coming in and you're not exercising, so you're not using it, the body has the ability to increase the amount of aromatase and convert excess testosterone into estrogen, and in essence magnifies the problem you had before. In other words, now you have more estrogen than you had before you started using the cream and the roll-on and the patches and all that. So it actually makes the quote-unquote man boobs, or the weight in your chest, increase. Okay, so if your doctor just gives you this stuff and said, oh, your testosterone's low, I'm going to put you on a supplement, well, instead of just going on a supplement, why don't we try to figure out why your testosterone's low? Okay, it probably has to do with if you have a lot of stored body fat, or your percent body fat is a lot higher, you're going to have more estrogen than testosterone. If you're not exercising, your body's going to naturally reduce testosterone. You know, testosterone increases the amount of muscle mass you have. Muscle is very metabolically expensive. It's tough to keep, especially, you know, if it's not needed. So if it's not needed, the body will eliminate it, because at the end of the day, what is the body trying to do? It's trying to survive. So why would you have all this extra muscle if you didn't need it? You're burning all this extra calories, and calories is what keeps you alive. So it's not just a matter of fixing a symptom, it's curing the problem. And that's what we're here to do. So if what I just said to you sounds like a lot of double talk and it makes no sense, this is where the coaching comes in. This is where I'll sit down with you and discuss these things, because it's very, very important that you just don't take pills, potions, and powders to cover up symptoms. Let's get you eating well. Let's get you exercising properly. Let's reduce your stress. Let's work on your sleep and your hydration, help you with some supplementation, and let's turn you into the healthiest person you could be. Let's have you have optimal health and wellness. Okay, so diet. Follow the 3-2-1 and the 3-2-2 cycling protocol. Okay, so that means you go on eat less, exercise less for a week, eat more, exercise more the following week, and you go back and forth. Okay, sometimes people do 2 weeks of eat more, exercise more, 1 week of eat less, exercise less. But again, this is where we could sit down and talk about this, you know, and decide what cycling is going to work best for you. And again, you could follow with the exercise, do the same thing. Obviously, the exercise of the 3-2-1 goes with the diet of the 3-2-1, and so forth. Okay, supplements. Vitamin D. Okay, I always tell people that you really need to increase your vitamin D, especially in the wintertime. Vitamin D isn't just about weight loss. Vitamin D is about your immune system. It's a very strong antioxidant. In other words, it will help to decrease the incidence of many, many cancers. It also helps with, you know, your immune system. It'll help stop fungal infections. There's just so many things that can certainly help. And, you know, doing 10,000 international units a day of vitamin D is really no big deal. It's pretty easy to do. It's not that expensive. Zinc, magnesium, saw palmetto. There's just so many things we could be adding in. And again, you know, to try to go to the health food store and start buying all this off the shelf and trying to figure out how much you need, you know, the nutrition assessment, the free nutrition assessment that I offer on my website does all this for you. You really don't need to spend time trying to figure all this out. Okay. If you have questions on that, you just let me know and I'll sit down and go through the assessment with you. Okay, so targeting according to a woman's cycle. This is part of Susan's domain. She has some very good information. So this is where I kind of jump off. I have a link here on YouTube. This is Susan's Stubborn Female Fat Loss Seminar. I highly suggest that if you want to learn more about PCOS and stubborn female fat loss, watch your seminar, take notes, watch it again. She does a fantastic job. All right, gang. I just wrapped up everything. That's 12 weeks. That's everything I know up till now. I'm sure I'll learn some more before I do the next webinar. I'm actually going to get out of this. Click back here. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, I'm going to open up the chat box. And if you're a client of mine and you'll be in the next day or two and you want to spend some time before or after a session talking about any of this, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you. After I get off here, I am going to go on Facebook. And if you want to talk there, we can talk some more there. But I want to thank everyone for spending the last 12 weeks with me. I hope you got a lot out of this. You know a whole lot more about how to eat, how to exercise, and how to manage your stress. And, you know, we may be done with our 12 weeks of coaching with regards to these webinars, but Susan and I certainly are not going anywhere. And we want to be here to help you in any way we can. Even a year from now, you're always going to have access to us on Facebook. So don't ever feel like you can't reach out to us because we're here to help. So I want to thank everyone for spending the last 12 weeks with me. Like I said, I will be doing another one of these probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll start up right from the beginning. So if you felt like you got something out of this, or maybe you want to just jump in for another 12 weeks, you'll be more than welcome. I was telling a client the other day, week 11, last week's webinar, I really didn't care for the way it turned out and like the way I presented it, so that's going to change. And there'll be some other changes along the way too. So, you know, Susan and I are constantly trying to stay on top of new research and try to present whatever we find out that is helpful. Okay, so I will continue to work my plan and help you work yours as well. Take care, God bless, and I'll see everyone real soon. Have a good night.